I was going to have narrative distance be lesson 5 and this week be on point of view, but I decided to switch them because I want the rest of the class for you to know this information we're learning this lesson, because I want to be able to keep reinforcing it, because this is a thing we need to practice over and over, because this is one of the biggest things that gets messed up and things that we all need to work on. So I want to be able to practice this lesson over and over, so I switched it so that we could do this one first. And so we'll be talking about this in chat a lot, and so I'll be giving you examples, and I think every week maybe I'll give you like one example of this, so that to give you a problematic example, and then so you guys can recognize what's wrong and fix it, because recognizing is half the battle with voice issues. And if you could start recognizing it when it's distancing and when there's a problem, then you can start addressing it in your own work. And I know some of us have talked, and it's like, it's hard to even figure out when it's happening. So that's what this is about. Okay, so narrative distance. Narrative distance, if I'm trying to explain what it is to you, it's a little bit self-explanatory. It's when you're using language and sentences that's putting distance between the reader and your character. And, well, what the heck does that mean, Heather? That's why there's going to be a lot of examples in this week's lesson. So you won't have to be, again, this is not going to be really esoteric. I'm going to show you concretely over and over and over and over so you can know what I mean. But basically, an easy way to think of it is like zoom on a camera. How close into the character's thoughts are we getting? And there's really practical ways to think about that. Like the easiest way, or that we do it, is we say, Susie felt sad. That's a very distancing statement, because you're talking about Susie's feelings, rather than if you could write that in a much closer way. You could zoom the camera in by saying, Susie's shoulders slumped. This day sucked. Why couldn't anything go right? And then you could list off what was wrong with the day. You see how much closer that second example was, and how we get a feel for Susie's personality through the second one by just giving her direct thoughts, rather than saying, Susie felt sad, it had been a bad day. But often we just, as writers, we just say the second one. We say the first one, Susie was sad, it had been a bad day. And then we go on to describe things. And that's when it's hard for readers to connect to the voice of your character, because we haven't given them the voice. We've just given them talking about a character, rather than giving them the character themselves. And that's what narrative distance is all about. And so I unpack that a lot of different ways. So there's distancing words like felt or thought. Jim thought about all the different ways that his friend had been a jerk to him. Why are you telling us about what Jim thought about? No, boom, just tell us. Just give Jim's direct thoughts. Jim had told him this, and da-da-da-da-da, Just give the direct thoughts. Don't tell us Jim thought about. So, felt, thought. I have a list of distancing words. Where did I? Yeah. Realized. She realized, there can even be the double dippers. She realized she felt great, No. Knew. She knew she wanted this. No. Wanted is another one. She wanted, or she was trying. So those those distancing words or something, you can just look through your manuscript, and whenever you see those, you're like, no, that's a distancing language. I can just go straight to the thought. Passive voice is another, you'll see what I mean by that. So for all of these, I'm giving you examples, like concrete examples, so then you can see and then start to look through your writing and see if you're using those. Description instead of active observation, and this one we've actually talked about, like in the first Jack Reacher writing, sample reading, we were talking about how if you go into a room and just start describing things rather than you go into a room and you're actively observing things through a character's eyes. Now, I go into that more in depth here. The next thing is being present in action as it occurs. And this is a real tough one. And so this, I completely understand why we want to just say, we want to be really outside the action and just be like, the planes were flying overhead and bombs were dropping in an, earth-shattering explosion. Like we just get really there's really long sentences and detailing all these things that you completely would not notice or be talking about in the moment. And it's not just action with bombs dropping, although that is the example that I use in the thing, but any kind of action, even like in the action of a fight between characters or a heavily emotional moment, you have to remember that you're in your character's body. Theoretically, you're close third-person point of view, and I know that the point of view chapter is after now, but just trust me, limited third-person or first-person point of view is the way that modern fiction is written now, and next lesson you'll learn why. But you're in somebody's body, so you can't be describing an emotional or very intense moment as if, you're not. So you have to feel the character's panic and adrenaline, and so I'll give you some ideas and ways to do that. Group scenes is another place where people kind of fall down, where there's so much dialogue, there's so many people sitting at the table, that you can almost lose the point of view. You have, I'll read this even in published books sometimes, where there's so many people talking, I don't even know whose point of view the scene is supposed to be in, because it's just everybody's there, and it's just bouncing around, and we're not getting those, that dialogue. There's so much dialogue, we're not getting those thought bubbles in between the dialogue, the reaction to. So we're not getting whose point of view it is, especially with a third person limited, where you kind of skip. You skip point of view people between scenes. And if you can't tell the point of view that you're in, then you've completely lost the voice. Because obviously it's not strongly voiced enough if we don't know who the person is that we're supposed to be hanging along with for the ride for this point of view chapter. And dialogue is another area where you got to just make sure to be inserting those thought bubbles, like we talked about with the Hunger Games during chat. The thought bubbles that Katniss, or that Collins introduces for Katniss, sliding in between each of those dialogue bits, that's where we get to know Katniss. That's where we get to know her personality. So go back and look at chat, or just go back and look at the Hunger Games section and see where Collins is slipping in Katniss's thoughts. They're quick thoughts. They're not paragraphs. They're 1 or 2 sentences. And that's what I'm talking about here. That's where you get to insert voice. That's where you get to get closer narratively. So you get to close that narrative distance gap. And that's where voice starts to really come through. And that's your opportunity to let your readers get to know your character. And so you can't be missing those. That's what this class is all about. And this chapter and this lesson is to let you know how to recognize it and how to get closer. This week's reading is fun. It's going to be from Gone Girl, and I think I'm going to slip in one from a romance book that uses this really effectively, because there's a guy who has some neurological damage, and the writer goes in and shows us his thoughts, um, viewed through the lens of the neurological damage. So we are so close. It's almost stream of consciousness close. But effectively, like a lot of stream of consciousness novels, like I'll show you in the list, go the literary experimental route. But this is in a mainstream genre romance novel, which is why I thought it was really interesting. And this romance novel is one that, like, all readers of romance know, because it's kind of because of this character who manages to come through so well because of the voicing. And then Gone Girl does voice amazing, and I might use it multiple times because there's almost 3 voices in that novel. There's the main guy, the girl in the journal, and then maybe you haven't read it. I should ask you guys in chat if you read the whole thing, but I'll give you a portion of it. Okay, I'm looking forward to chat this week, because that's where we really get to talk, and teaching gets to happen kind of in real time. So, all right, see ya.